Okay,
Yeah.
let's jump into our criteria for all-star reserves. We're going to start with the Eastern Conference. What did you look for when trying to pick this? Obviously, it's so amorphous. It's so, you can do this 97 different ways, right? But
Yeah.
what did you look for when trying to pick these teams?
Well, I mostly look for, guys who were on winners, who were contributing to winning. Obviously, we like to reward good defense and efficient offense. But, I also value games played. So Kevin Durant, wouldn't have made it for me. I don't think. I think he's missed too many games. So if he had relied on me to make a reserve team, might not have picked him. So I care about the games played, and I care about how your team is doing. It's hard to be an all-star on a loser, to me.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree. So like someone like I can't imagine picking like Paolo Banchero, for instance, who I know
Right.
finished high in the fan or in the player vote. Actually, I think he finished 8th among players in
Hmm.
front court voting. I just can't. I can't pick that
I think
guy.
he's an all-star caliber guy. Like, he's gonna be an all-star player. But
Yeah,
his
totally.
statistics aren't overwhelming enough for me to be like, oh yeah. I mean, he should be on there. I mean, if
And
I
frankly, I would pick Franz Wagner over him, if I'm being completely honest, in Orlando. But the other thing is that have you been watching the Orlando Magic recently, Dave?
they're scrappy.
Do you know what their record is in their last 27 games?
They, they're like, what, 20 and 31 or 20 and 32 overall, but
Yeah.
I don't know, they're 10 and something in their last 15, or 10 and 5 in their last 15 or something.
Yeah, they're 15 and 12 in their last
There we go.
27.
Okay.
They have a positive net rating. Like, they're good. And by the way, that last 27 game like span, the reason that you pick this as the marker is when Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony got off of their minutes restrictions and started to be able to play like full games. Magic rule. I talked about the Magic last week on the pod. I don't need to do it again. But minutes played definitely matters for me. Games played definitely matters for me. Again, the reason for that is just that everything is so tight this year that I wanted to use it as a real kind of tiebreaker, almost more than anything. And that especially came up in the Western Conference. We'll talk about guys like Devin Booker, Anthony Davis. I set a games played marker of 30 in terms of where I wanted guys to have at least played. That's, something like 55% of games. It's not that much. Like it's not that high. I don't think I'm setting the bar drastically above where it should be. It also knocks out Kawhi Leonard, who, by the way, has been phenomenal in the games that he has played, especially over the course of the back half of the 27 he's played. He played 27 games. There are teams that have played 54. That's like half the season. I decided in a year where it's so close, I'm setting a 30 game cutoff. It's not a unreasonable number, but I want to reward the guys that have been on the court at the very least.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump in. Eastern Conference all-star reserves. Do you want to start in the backcourt or the front court, Dave? Because I think both are an absolute shit show.
Either you lead, whichever.
Okay.
I mean, we should start with Embiid, right?
Well, okay, let's go to the front court. Yeah, because Embiid is the obvious one. So Joel Embiid is going to get one of these front court spots. To me, that leaves kind of a big group of front court guys to consider now for what could be 3 spots. Pascal Siakam, Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, DeMar DeRozan were the 4 I considered essentially for, and Julius Randle. So that's 5 for 3 spots, basically. And that's a hard group to kind of parse through, I think. The top guy that I picked was Bam Adebayo. I think that he combines offense and defense in the best way out of this group. You look at the numbers, he's been absolutely outstanding this year. He's averaging, what is it? I believe it's 21 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists, shooting 54% from the field, 79% from the line. He's also been, in my opinion, a top 3 defender in the NBA this season. That's just an all-star season. He is the guy on the Miami Heat that is carrying them. I've seen people, choose Jimmy Butler as their all-star from the Heat. I absolutely do not buy that. I don't see it. I think Bam has been the guy that has carried the load for them all season. It has to be Bam Adebayo is my second forward pick behind Joel Embiid.
Yeah, and that's mine as well. Bam Adebayo for all the reasons you listed. It's his most efficient offensive season. I think he's really done a good job of being more aggressive, which has been the knock on him the last couple of years. They needed him to create more for himself, and he finally is doing that. So, and you mentioned the defensive acumen that he's been displaying this season. He's in the defensive player of the year conversation. When you look at what he's doing with the personnel around him, I mean, Jimmy Butler's in and out of the lineup. Everyone's in and out of the lineup in Miami, except for Bam. Bam plays, and Bam, he lifts he's a rising tide for the defense. So, yeah, I mean, he's been spectacular.
Yeah, he's just been absolutely phenomenal all season. I know Jimmy leads him in scoring. I know that, I think that he's averaging like 5 assists per game, and he's been terrific on defense. This is a great Jimmy Butler year again. And I think Jimmy Butler absolutely is an all-star consideration, but there's just no way to me that if you watch the Heat consistently, you can say that Jimmy is the guy over Bam at this point of the season. Maybe that changes by the end point of the season, and they're a little bit closer in terms of minutes played, games played, everything like that.
Yeah, okay. And we know who's going to be in the playoffs. That's the thing about Jimmy Butler.
Totally right.
And I think that he probably knows this too. Not making an all-star team.
Yeah.
I
don't think he cares.
Yeah.
I don't think he cares. He might like the few days off. Maybe he'll go down, maybe he'll stay in Miami. Have a good time. Okay. My next guy, I picked Pascal Siakam over Randall, Butler, and DeRozan. Siakam, to me, has been the best kind of mix of scoring, playmaking, defensive capability. He covers so many holes for the Toronto Raptors. He's responsible for creating so many shots for them in an offense that looks like absolute dog shit at times. And I know that they're sitting in like 10th in offensive efficiency right now. But if you talk to any Raptors fan, you watch the Raptors regularly, that half-court offense just gets absolutely miserable to watch way too often. Siakam is the guy that carries the load there. And we're seeing a bit of a resurgence from Fred VanVleet, which is great. We're seeing Scotty Barnes really develop as a playmaker, I think, over the course of this last month. They've started utilizing him a little bit more in short rolls. They're starting to use his processing speed a little bit better. But Siakam's the guy. He is the guy at the center of it all. I had to pick Siakam.
Yeah, same. He's 26, 8 rebounds, 6 assists a game, and 6 assists with no shooting. Yeah, which is just, this is almost impossible to do. What he's able to do for them in transition is huge because, as you mentioned, that half-court offense just is non-existent, and he stands out on the defensive end in a defense that sometimes it can get
also messy,
a little ball watchy. You know what I mean? And so, look, Pascal Siakam is a top 20 player in the NBA, and him being an all-star shouldn't be a shock to anybody. He's a guy that other teams are lining up hoping they can get.
Yep. Okay, let's go to the guards now. I've got a big group here that I considered in the guards.
Well, wait, I have another.
Let's do the guards and then let's do the two.
Oh yeah, I forgot the wild card spots. Yes.
Yeah, 3 forwards and then 2 wild cards.
Got it.
I also have another forward in there, but let's go to the guards. For the guards, I have got Jaylen Brown, Trae Young, Jalen Brunson, Drew Holiday, James Harden, Darius Garland is my big mix of guards. And this was very difficult to parse through. This was very, very hard. My number one choice was a bit easy, though. I picked Jaylen Brown. I think he is the very obvious selection here. The Celtics are the number 1 team in the NBA this season. They are well deserving of having 2 All-Stars. Jaylen Brown is averaging 27.7 rebounds, 3 assists. He plays solid on-ball defense. This team desperately needs his shot creation all of the time, essentially. You watch that Lakers game, he was absolutely a monster late in the game when they needed it most. He's been consistently great all season. I think Jaylen Brown is the number 1 backcourt pick.
Yeah, and he's paired really nicely with Jalen Brunson, right? Brunson's effectiveness has gone up since Julius Randle kind of rediscovered.
I said Jaylen Brown, not Brunson. Yeah. But yeah,
my bad. I was thinking about my own pick here. But yes, I also have Jaylen Brown. I feel like we had the same team, Sam.
we might.
I also have Jaylen Brown, who is a no brainer. I mean, he is the 1B to Tatum's 1A. I mentioned this the other day. How unique it is to have a guy who so perfectly complements your main star. When things get tight for Jason Tatum late, that seems to be when Jaylen Brown turns up the aggressiveness and attacks the basket, which is exactly what the Boston Celtics need. When they start getting into that hot potato offense, we're gonna just go ISO, abandon our principles. Jaylen Brown abandons it in the right way by attacking and trying to get to the rack, and then ultimately getting to the free throw line. I think that his development and evolution as a guy who can get to the line consistently. I mean, you could draw a straight line between that and his skill with the basketball in his hands. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't dribble and sometimes still can't, but has done a much better job this year. I think coming out, like, he seems to know that he is a guy that's capable every night of being the best player on the court. Yeah. And that's new in the last, I'd say year.
Yeah, I think the handle is exactly it, man. Like, I think that he knows now that he can get to his spots just a little bit easier. Just, as you mentioned, the free throw rate is up. He's averaging 5.5 free throws per game. That's the highest number of his career so far. He consistently attacks the basket. He's been really, really good and really, really consistent. Do you remember the conversations? Do you remember the stupid ass conversations people had about Jaylen Brown?
I don't know, man. I was calling him modern Scottie Pippen from the day he was drafted, and people thought I was crazy.
Freaking Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can't play together, Dave. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh yeah, neither could Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, right? Like, these two guys that are really good basketball players can't figure it out. It's so, I don't know, man. Is it good to have a bunch of guys on your team that can dribble and shoot and defend? Or not?
Yeah, I don't know.
The jury's out.
Is that good? Is that what teams are looking for?
It's like Garland and Mitchell. Teams? Can you have two guards that can shoot the crap out of the ball? I just don't know.
Okay, so the next guard spot. This was a really hard one. I kind of talked about this on the last episode, and I think people are going to be upset. I picked James Harden. I picked James Harden over Tyrese Halliburton. I picked James Harden over Drew Holiday, over Darius Garland, over everybody. And here's why. James Harden, if you look at the numbers this season, averaging 21 points, 11 assists, 6 rebounds. Yeah, he's only played 33 games. And I get that, that might be a problem for some people. And I think it's reasonable for it to be a problem for some people. I set my cutoff at 30 games. I am abiding by my rules. Basically, you can have your own rules. Harden this season, I think, has done the best job of his career in terms of playing unselfishly, in terms of getting everybody in the offense involved. His, assist number, it's not the highest number of his career. He averaged 11.2 in 2017. But I think it's just the best mix of everything. You look at the turnovers that year, he averaged 5.7 of them. This year, he's down to 3.5. He is just consistently dominating the game when Joel Embiid is on the court in that 2-man game where they have Embiid short roll or they'll have him roll all the way to the basket. He's dominating the game when Joel Embiid is off the court. This team is winning all of its minutes without Joel Embiid, with James Harden on the court. They have a +2 net rating, if I remember correctly, in those settings. It's just a remarkable set of, it's a remarkable way that James Harden has completely fit. I had my worries. I talked with Mo DeKeel last year at the deadline about the way that Harden and Embiid would fit in terms of Joel likes the mid post. Joel likes to short roll into that area. Harden, he likes to try and drive. Are those driving angles going to be there? Is everything going to work in the way that they want it to? Obviously, it took a bit of time. I didn't think it was quite smooth last year necessarily, but this year it's seamless. This year, Harden has figured out how to space, how to take that step back. Two great players figuring out how to play together. it's been kind of like perfect every single time I watch them in ball screens. So I get that he does not have the burden that Tyrese Halliburton does. At the end of the day, I think it is so much harder in the NBA to go from taking a team from like being able to win 25% of their games to winning 50% of the games, like Halliburton is for the Pacers, to taking a team from winning 50% of their games to winning like 70% of their games, as Harden and Embiid are for the 76ers. I just think it's way harder to take that second step across the league. So I went with Harden here. We're going to get to Halliburton in a minute. I'm sure of it. But do you have Harden on your team?
I do have Harden on my team. I have Halliburton above Harden, but we can talk Harden.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for all the reasons that you listed, this has been a great season from Harden. It's under the radar, which is funny to say about James Harden, but it's under the radar because it's been so clean and efficient. This guy is just not turning the ball over. He's not, I'm not going to say he's coasting through these games until the fourth quarter where he seems to have a little bit of an extra burst, but it does seem as he's picking his spots early so that he can take over late. And he's throwing some of these little pocket passes behind the back, between the legs, in tight pick and roll space with Joel Embiid.
Yep.
And Joel's got beautiful hands, which may be the best hands that Harden's ever been able to do pick and rolls with.
Yeah.
And man, that is fun to watch for a basketball nerd. So yeah, I think Harden he's been great. You know, we were all writing him off, and look, he just proved us wrong. He's in pretty good shape. And I think basketball wise, man, he's playing some fun basketball to watch. It's still the grift, you know, you still got to deal with all the free throws, but it's at least entertaining. When you watch it on Synergy, it's fun. When you don't have to watch the free throws, it's great.
Here's the good news. James Harden taking 6 free throws per game this year. Much lower than normal.
That is good news.
Okay.
All of them after the 5-minute mark in the fourth quarter.
So let's talk about Halliburton now, because I have Halliburton as my first wild card pick. He's just like got to be on the team, in my opinion. I love Tyrese. I think he's been my favorite player in the NBA, in the entire NBA this season, point blank. He's averaging 20 points, 10 assists, 4 rebounds per game, shooting 48% from the field, 40% from 3, 88% from the line. He is in every way just this metronome of efficient basketball, efficient decision-making. He leads and carries this high-paced transition attack. If you've watched the Pacers recently, it's a lot of, their transition possessions are Ben Mathurin puts his head down, seeks out contact, tries to score at the bucket. When you watch Halliburton, it's like, okay, it's a little bit slower, but it's methodical. He picks out trailers really well. He picks out, exactly who he's looking for every single time on the court. It's just the way that this Pacers offense runs with him, without him. You can just see how incredibly, remarkably valuable this human being is to any basketball team, let alone this Indiana Pacers team that is just completely, utterly fallen off of a cliff without him in a uniform.
Yeah, his shot selection really stands out to me as a young guy. He seems to get himself open without the ball to a degree that a lot of guys, as good as he is in the pick and roll, a lot of guys are not as good off the ball, but I think he's really nice off the ball. He's a solid, complete player. And there's just not a lot of guys his age that are doing, like, leading a team the way that he has.
Yeah.
And I think you got to give him credit for that as well, in addition to just performing. I mean, leading the league in assists per game right now, and also playing good defense. I mean, almost 2 steals a game, a half a block a game, which for a guard, and especially in that system, he's not going to get a ton of blocks as it is. But, he is every bit an all-star player. I mean, they're a tanking team that couldn't tank because he's too competent at his job, and also just really good and talented. I mean, I think he's a better player than Domantas Sabonis right now. I would, like, if you said pick one, I'm picking Tyrese Halliburton every day of the week. And I know that people are enamored with Sabonis in Sacramento, but I think Halliburton has a higher ceiling today, like as in this season, has a higher ceiling on a per game basis than
Yeah.
Domantas Sabonis. Now, Sabonis is a super high floor, and they're always now going to be compared because of this trade. But Halliburton is an all-star, no doubt. He's been amazing this year.
Yeah, look, I agree with you. I just don't want to wade into the Sabonis Halliburton wars right now.
I do.
Because they're both going to be all-stars. So I'm just not, I want to celebrate.
Oh, yeah. Good. I don't have Sabonis on my list. So.
Oh God, we're going to have to, we'll get into that in a minute. Yeah. Okay. Last wild card in the East. We are down to Julius Randle, Jimmy Butler, Darius Garland, DeMar DeRozan, Drew Holiday, Trae Young, Jalen Brunson. Okay. So for me, this came down to Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle, Jimmy Butler. Darius Garland, by the way, is having a phenomenal season that I think deserves so much more credit than what it's getting. He's averaging 22 points per game, which is actually a career high. He's averaging more points than he averaged last year. He's actually averaging fewer assists just by a little bit than what he averaged last year. But like his production has not fallen off one single bit, playing with Donovan Mitchell, who dominates the ball at an exceptionally high level. Like Darius Garland has been absolutely ridiculously good this season. He was the guy that I think I felt bad about leaving off. Jalen Brunson, I do think that Darius Garland's having a bit better of a season than Brunson, if I'm being completely honest. I think that Brunson has been kind of the leader of that Knicks offense, and that Knicks offense has been absolutely great. They are currently 6th in the NBA in offensive efficiency, and in large part it's because of the ruthless efficiency with which Brunson runs the show and keeps everything in place. I feel bad about not including him. I think last season he would have been an all-star for sure in the Eastern Conference. Jimmy Butler, I think, has been great. I just ultimately kind of defaulted to some of these guys that have played a few more games. Jimmy's played 36 games. Jalen Brunson has played, I believe, like 1,700 minutes. Darius Garland is up to about 1,600 minutes. Jimmy Butler, I believe, right now is at about 1,000. No, he's at 1,200 minutes. I kind of use minutes played, given that it's like 25 to 35% more. For some of these guys, just as a little bit of a difference maker. At the end of the day, I went Julius Randle. I'll be honest, like I didn't really even consider Trae Young that hard. Like I considered him, but he was a pretty easy knockout for me just because of the inefficiency this season and because of the defense. I know he's averaging 27 and 10. You have to consider someone that's averaging 27 and 10. But at the end of the day, this is a guy that has a true shooting percentage that is like barely at league average. And the defense is just a substantial negative every time he's out there. Julius Randle, on the other hand, has been just an absolute monster. And I've been pretty strong on the bandwagon from the start of the season that I thought Jalen Brunson was the guy. I think that that's turned kind of over the course of the last couple of weeks, just given the way that Randle has continued this tear. You can just kind of look at it from right around Thanksgiving until now. Julius Randle is averaging 27 points, 12 rebounds, 5 assists on 46% from the field, 35% from 3 on 9 attempts per game, only turning it over 2.6 times. So he has almost a 2-to-1 assist turnover ratio. He's getting to the line 8 times per game. He's just been utterly dominant for like a 30 to 35 game stretch now. Like he's been one of the 15 best players in the league for a 30 to 35 game stretch now. And I think I kind of just have to reward that at the end of the day, especially given that he also played 54 games, played a crazy amount of minutes. He's been just a little bit more valuable than the rest of these guys for me. So I went Julius Randle as my last wild card spot.
Same. And again, I was getting into it before. I think that a lot of the credit that Brunson deserves, you could share with Randle. Brunson's season, right? In a lot of ways, because they have paired up nicely together, I think. And Randle, it's when he signed that contract, he looks just like the guy who signed the contract. Let's say that. I think defensively, you can trust him on an island again. His rebounding has been spectacular this year. He's been really physical, actually, on the boards, which I appreciate. And screen setting. I know it's a funny thing to say, but like his screen setting opens stuff up for all those guards.
Yeah.
So you add that into his shooting efficiency being back up to what we want out of Julius Randle. And yeah, I think he's an easy choice. The two-way play makes it pretty easy. Although, got to give Jalen Brunson had a game-saving block the other day. So huge finish at the buzzer in that big win. So, but yeah, Randall's my pick too.
Is there anyone else that you considered outside of the names we've talked about so far?
No, not really. The injury, I mean, Brooke Lopez is the name that comes to mind, but he kind of tailed off a little bit. Started the season out super hot, but everything's kind of tailed off for him and for the Bucks in general. Yeah, but no, not really.
Yeah. Brooke and Drew were kind of a tough to like kind of parse through for me, because Brooke has played considerably more minutes than Drew has at this point. I think like probably like 800 more minutes, something like, or no. It's like 300 more minutes than Drew. I think Drew's probably been a little bit better, but Brooke has also been a top 3 defender in the NBA at this point. In addition to providing the floor spacing and providing some real ability around the basket to score, I just kind of decided that Julius Randle was better than both of them. If I'm being completely honest, I just picked one.